I appreciate you also not showing up in full Green Bay forgive. Yeah, I thought I'd keep it a little bit more formal for the first meeting. Also, is the Fort Myers hat intentional? Because I don't know if you know that the Florida branch is in Fort Myers.
No, we for our honeymoon, my wife and I went to Fort Myers.
Oh, nice.
She was very pregnant. Uh,
The honeymoon?
for the honeymoon,
Oh man,
and we were just went there for a week. At some point in the future, we'll do a proper honeymoon.
our honeymoon was a cruise. It was a Carnival cruise, and it was miserable. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't all bad, but we had 4 stops scheduled, and they canceled 2 of them. And all these conspiracies started coming out. Like we were never scheduled to dock there in the first place. They lied to us, but it was the rockiest trip.
I haven't been sold on cruises.
They ended up telling us, "Oh, we'll give you 50% off your next Carnival cruise." We're like, never in a million years. And then we ended up. My cousin got married in Santorini, Greece.
Sure,
So we're like,
that sounds.
that's our real one.
Yeah,
That's what we count as our honeymoon.
yeah.
Yeah.
I studied abroad in Rome for a semester,
Oh, no kidding.
so I was there. So it was like Greece. We took trips to all that same general area. Not to transition directly into roofing, but I came back from Rome and immediately dropped out of school to start a work with the company that I was with for about a decade.
Okay.
So they pulled me right out from Rome to roofing. So that was
Roof. I feel like it's a great segue to get into what we're talking about today. So I have with me Josh Ratliff. He's the newest member of the Raise team, has a deep background in the roofing industry, and also is a consultant for roofing businesses. That's what you'll be doing for Raise as well. So we're really excited to have you on board and excited to pick your brain a little bit about some of the things you've seen in the industry, some of the lessons you've learned, and some of the wisdom that you might be able to impart to our audience. So thank you for joining. Excited to dig in.
Yeah, happy to be here. I started out fresh out of high school. I answered a Craigslist ad to do what they call project management, as most sales sort of positions
End up getting
are just super vague. You're just like, okay, I guess I'm going to be like a contractor or something. I don't even know what that is.
buy yourself a tool belt and all like.
Yeah, so I actually had that, and that interview was first, and then the next one was to be like a mason. I was gonna haul around brick and build stuff.
Okay.
Right. I went to this interview for project management, and turns out a salesman by the name of Mike fell off a roof. I fell off a ladder, really, technically, backwards, snapped both of his wrists. He was a sales guy, and he's a commission only sales guy. He wanted to keep on working to make money, and the company told him they'd hire him as an assistant, and that was me for $10 an hour. I sat and watched this guy sell roofs for all summer. And then it turned into the next year coming back. I went back to school, back to college, that sort of off season in Wisconsin. And then the next year I was running production for them in St. Louis. They had the brilliant idea that they'd have a 19-year-old kid run a couple $1 million worth of production for them. It went about as well as you'd expect it to. I was trying really hard, and I did a good job for what it was, but I got very little to, if any, respect from any part of the operation, right? The customers, the crews, the salespeople, the management. It was an uphill battle the whole time, but got through it and went back the next year, managed production again, and then that next off season, I went to Rome for school and came back, and Mike with his business partner Tom started their own thing and called me to be run production for them. Did that for another 6 or 7 years, and then got more into like the business side of things.
Yeah.
Started doing the accounting, started doing the bookkeeping, started doing some more strategic planning around operations, management, managed some sales, trained a lot of the salespeople and production managers to sort of operate within our structure that we had. Mike was the raw sales guy. Came from more of a business background. So, I would say I learned how to be a roofer from Mike. I learned the business from Tom. And that was sort of the yin and yang that they brought, which, was sort of the idea behind consulting as well. I feel like there's a lot of Mikes out there. Brilliant sales guy. He was awesome. Just, he was one of those guys where he he just made you laugh through the whole conversation. And at the end of it, you're just like, I just want to hang out with that guy.
Yeah.
If he does roofing, so be it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm good with that. So he goes sell stuff, and I learned that side of it from him. But there's a lot of mics out there, a lot of really, really good sales guys, and they start their own business, and they need that, for lack of a better word, his counterpart, right, to manage the business and to keep him on track, which was often a losing effort, keeping most people on track, right? But and that's where I feel like a lot of my knowledge comes through is on the business end, right? A lot of these guys don't need to be taught how to sell roofs. They know how to sell roofs. They know how to put the roof on. They got the crews down, right? They just need a little help with the business side, creating that structure, creating those efficiencies throughout the system, and holding people accountable as well to really get to that end goal of not only just high revenues, big sales numbers, but creating something that is efficient and isn't a burdensome sort of job that you've almost created
for yourself. Yeah, right.
That it's been a very common thread in the folks that I've talked to.
100%. So we should let folks know how we ended up getting in touch and meeting and ultimately getting set on this path to where we're now working together. So you posted on one of the Facebook groups, basically just gauging, hey, I'm considering starting a consulting business for roofing contractors. And I came across that post and I was like, interesting, because our business model here at Raise, I always say we're not a software company, we're tech-based consultants. And it's taken me a couple of years, truthfully, to really figure out what exactly that means. And we've been working our way towards it. But I knew, all right, if I can find folks who share our perspectives in terms of what it takes to sustainably grow a roofing company, I think we can really make something big happen. And so every time we've either hopped on a phone call or a Zoom call or whatever it may be, we just end up talking, much longer than we plan to. And often it's just like, yeah, we're pretty much seeing things the same way.
Yeah, it's definitely been a sort of a kindred spirits type of relationship so far. We've it's funny you mentioned that, because I even was talking with just Ryan. We were on a call demoing some stuff, and I was like, I have to be careful with phone calls to Robert. It's one of those things where neither of us want to get off the phone. I have to time allotted for that phone call.
Yeah, right. There has to be a hard, and there has to be another meeting booked right afterwards.
Yeah, something I can't get out of.
Yeah, right.
So that's been pretty much every conversation.
Yeah, honestly.
And it's all just talking shop, talking business, roofing business, and it mainly just going over the stories of how things have melted down or how things have
gone off the
rails, and how to handle those situations appropriately.
Yeah, it's funny because Josh is here at the Superior Roofing office. He drove down from his home in Appleton, Wisconsin. It's about 3 hours north. I drove in to the office, and we're meeting in person for the first time. And so I was kind of walking him through the office, giving a tour. And at some point we just stopped mid-tour. And again, kind of just picked up the conversation, talking about all the things that we're excited, I think, about. I think that's why the conversation it's like we both are excited because we know that we're seeing things the same way. And we know that it's going to be something that's very powerful to the contractors that we work with to bring that perspective. Because there's the opportunity to kind of catch lightning in a bottle, I feel like. Because as you said, you got these folks who know how to drive revenue, know how to win jobs, know how to get contracts signed. And if anything, the need is just, all right, once your customer's through that front door, what's on the other side of it? Maybe there's nothing behind it other than you, the person who signed the contract. Or maybe there is a lovely experience in which, communication is really sharp. The install goes really well, and you collect the check and we're on our merry way, 5-star review, etc.
Yeah, I think honing in on some of that is important, because even the people who are sort of struggling operationally to be efficient and feel like, there's more chaos than there is calm, I would bet that probably even still 50 to 80% of their jobs go without a hitch. But if that 20 to 50% that go wrong, that's a lot. You know what I mean? You need to get to a point where it's in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be a couple of stragglers. crew dings up some fascia and you got to go back and repair it, or
Surprises after the tear off.
tear off ruins the missus hydrangeas and all hell breaks loose, something like that. But
So funny enough, the production manager here at Superior, he has insisted that sales reps document whether there's a koi pond or not for every job. So these are the traumas, right, that inform kind of the procedures that we put in place. But he's like, no, we need a field specifically, because on our race system, we have these inspection forms, right? He's like, no, we need one that asks, is there a koi pond? Because there was a customer who was like, yeah, nothing can get in because the fish will eat the granules and then they'll die. And it was like a whole ordeal. So it's just amazing. The things that you don't think about when it comes to installing a roof. And every home is different. Every property is different. Like,
I found more trouble with the stuff that you feel like you don't need to think about. Don't cover up an air conditioner on a hot day. That seems like pretty common sense to me. You know what I mean? Why would I even need to make sure the crew doesn't do that?
all right.
There's been more than once we've had to replace air conditioners by the crew throwing a tarp over it. There was one guy who threw a piece of OSB on top of it, plywood, and then put the tarp on top of that, thinking that that was going to be okay. That also did not work. You know, it's stuff like that. You're like, why would you think that that was a good idea?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't, and they just got some guys to be like, oh, she kicking rocks. I mean, like, I tried. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you're the one who has to put out the fire.
Right. One of the things that we've been talking about kind of on this podcast repeatedly with some of the themes, like protecting our time and seeing time as the most valuable asset that we have. And whether it's the owner or it's a production manager, or even if it's the sales rep, like when something like that happens, that's a day you've lost. That's a day where you had a plan. You're like, oh, I'm going to get this, this, and this done. And it's going to be a nice, easy day in paradise. And yet I get that one phone call, right, from the crew, from whoever. Great. Well, there goes that plan. Now all of my attention gets sucked into this very particular aspect of the business. So the big picture of the company goes out the window. That doesn't get attention to today. This one customer and this one issue at this customer's house gets all of the attention. And these are the things that I think really set back companies, hold back from achieving that growth potential, because especially when it's the owner who is the one getting pulled into these things. I mean, I've been on phone calls where it's supposed to be a strategic call and they're like taking it from the truck because they're making a material run. It's like, okay, well, you know, we'll try and be productive here. But at the end of the day, I don't think much is going to be taken from this, because you're thinking about Miss Jones, who's pissed right now. And that's all that your mental space has.
Yeah. And there's definitely like an all hands on deck mentality at roofing companies where it's just like, doesn't matter whose job to what, this needs to be done at any given moment. And there's a camaraderie about that as well. You know, nobody's above running for material or what have you, but it's definitely trying to limit those sort of exposures of your time. I do think that limiting that stuff and really freeing you up, because I guess an example would be, you know, you get like the owner going to a job, you have a salesman at the job, you have the product manager at the job, you have somebody else at the job. How many people are you paying to be at that job?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's all just generally gets lumped into overhead, general overhead.
Whatever that all means, right? That particular veil that is overhead. Yeah.
The salaries, right? But, you know, if the owner and the production manager and, you know, salesperson and, you know, somebody else who knows we have on staff all shows up at the job to solve some problem, you're paying hundreds of dollars per hour, if not thousands of dollars per hour for everybody to be there when they're not doing what they're
right.
Job.
So it's not just the hard cost of like literally the hourly rate, but it's also your sales rep could be out selling
Opportunity costs.
I think that's one of the biggest kind of abstract concepts it's easy to not appreciate, I guess. Like, what is opportunity cost? How can you put a number on it? When you talk about opportunity cost, what are some of the things that come to mind? Why is that an important thing?
It's just what you could be doing, right? I think that, you know, as an owner, all the things that you can be doing to make your company grow. As a production manager, it's focusing on the next job, ordering the next materials, you know, calling the next customer. And, you know, the really busy ones are are tending to, hundreds of work orders, customers, whatever it may be. And, you're working 6-7 days a week, just putting all these orders together, these materials, checking on customers, doing repairs, callbacks, all of that. So you blowing an afternoon going to set customer, that potentially could have been avoided. That's the opportunity cost there, is what you could have been doing at any given time.
Yeah. And I talk to so many contractors, whether it's the owner or it's leadership, it's just like they use the term buried a lot. And I think that's such a good term because it's like when you dedicate a whole afternoon to a fire, everything that was supposed to get done still has to get done. So it's like literally stacked on top of their head. The thing is, these are not really one-offs typically. It's like probably 2 to 3 of my days in a week are going to be dedicated to putting out some kind of fire. And so you're really only getting about 50% of your expected output achieved. And that accumulates over time. And to ever feel like, oh, I'm on top of it and I can create some space for myself to think more in a strategic frame of mind where it's like, all right, the to-dos are done, the immediacies, the urgent tasks are done. Where's the business going from here, right? Where do we want to go? What are some initiatives we want to take up? That all sounds like distant, pie in the sky, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can talk to any owner and be like, if the business was running the way that you wanted it to be running right now, what would you be doing? Assuming that you'd still be working and not sitting on a beach somewhere.
Right.
But even if that's what you wanted to do, right? How do we get our SOPs or standards of practice, sort of our roadmap for how we want the company to run? How do we get that where we want it to be? And then how do we manage it? And that's really where, where I like what Raise is doing. And part of the reason that I wanted to come aboard was helping people create those roadmaps, create those SOPs, and in their own light, right? We're not trying to create some cookie cutter roofing company.
Right.
It's going to be whatever it is that, the client wants. So we'll sit down, we'll talk with ABC Roofing or whatever it may be. How do you want your company to look, right? And then how does it actually look right now? How do you see the procedures in place, and then what actually happens? And then how do we mold that back to sort of the way we want it to look? And you and I have talked a lot about what I would consider to be management by exception.
I love this concept that you've been using.
So it is really just creating those SOPs the way that you want your company to run, and then finding a way to just manage the deviations. And you can do that through KPIs for the sales team, or, what Raise would consider like time a quote has been sitting idly by, or what have you, in creating triggers that tell you when things fall outside of, the norm.
Right.
And
The standard.
and then the standard. And that's what you manage, right? You don't need to, because there's a lot of freedom with a lot of positions in roofing companies, and the sales guys are always doing what they're doing. The production manager, where, he has an objective, certainly could be anywhere at any given time, running material, checking on crews, checking on different job sites, right? But if, callbacks are within your standards, let's say there's one a week or one a month or whatever it may be. If they're within your standards and they're being handled in a timely manner, you don't need to pay attention.
Right.
Your company is running the way that you want your company to run. And then the nice part about that is, as things continue to stay within the norm, but you can see are causing a problem, you can go back and change the standard of the SOPs, standards of practice, for whatever you see is falling outside what you want your company to look like. It's a little bit different than sort of the managed by objective that I would consider like a Gino Wickman or the EOS model to sort of present, where you're giving people to-do lists. I don't think that that's a bad way to manage things by any means, but the more freedom that your sort of employees or contractors, how you run your roofing company, the freedom you allow them, it makes that management by objective a little bit harder, because you're really trying to nail them down like these specific things, whereas, they sort of get to them when they get to them. If the production manager finishes his labor orders at noon or midnight, I don't really care. I don't need to be hounding them as long as they get done.
Right.
And that is sort of the ability that you gain when you manage by
exception.
exception. Thank you. That's the benefit you gain when you manage by exception rather than trying to keep up with their to-do list. So I've always really enjoyed that. I stole that too from Tom. That my old boss, he was big on that. And you can go through even on like AR lists. That's a perfect example. You don't need to look at the 1 to 30 days. You need to look at the 90+ days and the ones gaining on the 30 to 60 list, right?
Yeah.
The ones in the 1 to 30 range on your accounts receivable report are probably well within your standard deviation of margin, right? 90+ is a problem.
Right.
And that's always the ones where the ownership or the financial guys, the ones who are concerned with cash flow, concerned with making payroll, those 90+ are like, those are collectible. I know they're collectible.
Right.
I don't know how or why they haven't been collected, but I know that money should be in our bank account.
Right.
And those are the ones that really get the most focus as they should. But in creating that, you can really create an efficient business and the one that you want to see, right? Because you're creating all of these SOPs.
And I think one of the phrases I hear thrown out a lot in my conversations is like, I want to be working on the business, not in the business. And I think that that's vague enough to sound like, oh, that sounds great, whatever that is. And I think what you're speaking to is like, this is what it looks like in practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's a way in which without your SOPs and without this perspective of, I just need to focus on the things that aren't going well, things that are far outside the norm, outside of the standard, you have an impulse. And I can speak to this. I've felt this impulse myself, just as, running Raise. I'm like, I haven't checked in on the development team in a minute. So and I have to fight. I want to be involved because I have perfectionist tendencies. Many owners do. I just want to make sure everything's going well. And so this has actually been a helpful concept for me because it's like, I've heard many fires.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to assume things are going well there because I need to focus on areas of the business that need my attention.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too, like this isn't like you get to just not pay attention to your business as well. It is like you still check in on everybody as you do with Raise. You have your, weekly all hands meeting where everybody hops on and we discuss what's going on. There's probably development meetings too and all of that stuff. But I mean, it's not like you don't have your sales meetings.
Yeah.
And you don't have your production meetings, but those are scheduled.
Right.
Right. And that's really what we're getting at is like, those are on your schedule and they're coming up. This isn't a fire that you're dropping what you're doing to go and tend to.
Right.
Or randomly waking up one morning and figuring out that, we have 50 callbacks that we have to deal with from the last, 60 jobs.
Yeah, right. And I feel like that is something, especially when you get into peak season. So here we're in the Midwest, like it's a little bit different down in the Gulf, I think, and just in the South generally. But like here, it's about this time of year. So we're at the end of February. We're right around the corner from where things just get blurry for a lot of contractors. And it's like you just go from March to about mid-November, sometimes in December. Like one day you snap out, or you're like, what just happened?
Yep.
And that's when you're looking back at like, okay, well, we've got a ton of callbacks. We've got our AR is a mess. We've got jobs from May that we've done. Hopefully they still have the money. Fingers crossed. I always joke too, because it's December. It's like, that's Christmas budget now.
Yeah. I remember we had a customer Christmas tree business that didn't pan out for the gentleman. And he just straight up told us, he's just like, yeah, I spent money on Christmas trees because I was going to start a little Christmas tree business and didn't work. Don't have your money anymore. And I wasn't the one who took the call, but the sales guy who came back was like, I didn't even know what to say. I was like, you still owe us the money? But what a weird, I was so thrown off by it. He kind of won that whole conversation.
He thought he was it was an investment.
Yeah, it was an investment. He was going to get us some money back. I just had to sell some Christmas trees. But it's a real thing, especially with insurance money. When they get that check, that second check to RCB
burn in a hole.
Yeah, they're like, that's a lot of money in my bank account. So that's certainly a big part of it. But I think it can't be understated how those scheduled meetings where you keep up with your company are far and above a way to manage rather than just managing whatever pops up at any given time. Because it allows you to work on the business. the way that, everybody talks about it. Maybe working on the business for you is, going out and selling. Some of these guys just miss selling jobs, or they just want to go and talk to the customers or whatever it may be. I know a lot of people have marketing strategies. People want to do work with charities. People want to do all sorts of cool stuff. Maybe you want to start looking at a new building for the business to grow into. All sorts of things that you can be doing as an owner. And it doesn't matter what any of those are. The point is you don't have the time to do them right now, right? Because you're far too spread thin.
So I want to ask a question to clarify something. We've talked about at once managing by exception, which can sound like looking for fires and sinking time into fires. So can you talk about it? It sounds like to me, when you manage by exception, you're still facilitating the solutions to those exceptions via the meetings. Because in my experience, meetings get scheduled but don't get attended because of fires often.
It could be, for sure. I think that the managed by exception is more so a way of like you having to remind people to do something, right? The fact that it's on your desk means that it's not a fire yet, but it's going to be. We want to catch those fires before they happen. Chances are, if there's quotes that have gone neglected, just because that a quote goes neglected doesn't mean the owner handles that. You press that back onto the salesperson, and there would be, a procedure in which you would do so.
Once you get that phone call from lead, it's like, they never sent me a quote, and and you need to make all these concessions for me to even consider. At that point, it's gotten a fire.
Or another good example would be, your production team has been neglecting fixing, the piece of fascia that the crew dented while they were tearing off. And then all of a sudden, because you didn't collect that money, they're just noticing other little things around the house, being like, I bet they messed something else up.
Yeah.
Where now that money is significantly harder to collect, you might even need the owner's intervention to do so. Whereas if you have a standard of practice that says callbacks need to be tended to within 72 hours or 48 hours, or whatever it may be, right? And you can see, you don't need to see that callback.
Right.
Until it hits that 72-hour mark. And then at that 72-hour mark, that's on your desk. So you can remind your production manager, or, you can have a way to flow that onto the top of his to-do list. That needs to be handled. And then you can set another 24-hour or 48-hour timer on that. But you're reminding him, it's sort of the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So every, so often, however you create your SOPs, however you create your procedures, it's addressing problems before they become fires.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I almost think of it like shepherding in a way. Like, sometimes your sheep start wandering, and at some point they get a little too far. You gotta shepherd that thing a little bit, because if they get too far out, then the wolves are gonna get them.
Yeah, and that's what creates that intervention that's constantly needed by higher up management. And on the production side, it's a lot more obvious, I would say, because those are problems that really hit you in the face. On the sales side, it's just lost revenue.
Yeah.
It's revenue that you never saw. So, it might not be as obvious on the day-to-day, but keeping up with, claims filed or following up after adjusters come out to either see if they got their check, their paperwork, whatever. If you go and help a homeowner file a claim, the adjuster comes out, buys it, paperwork's in the mail, I'll give you a call in a couple of days, see if you get your ACV check and your paperwork, and then you don't call them for 2 weeks. How many more times has that door been knocked? You know what I mean? How many times, what are the chances that you're going to still get that job? And even if it's reasonably high because you have a good relationship with them, you know what I mean?
You're still opening the door.
You know what I mean? So when an adjuster comes out, creates some procedure where there's a 48 hours, we call that customer, hey, I'm just checking in, reminding you to check your mailbox, right? Have you seen it? Have you seen your paperwork? Those are jobs. That's money in your sales guy's pocket.
Yeah.
Those people are already on board with you. They're about to get their paperwork, about to get you their deposit. you got to make sure that that's in your hands. You don't let other people get the opportunity to even have the potential to take that.
Right. So you're literally batting money away
Yeah.
if you're not monitoring that effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And however you want to manage it, I've seen, people do all sorts of stuff with like leads and quotes and keeping track of how they manage their salespeople's sort of efficiency or staying on top of their customers, which is often a problem for some of the sales guys. Yeah, I mean you're just creating your SOPs and then managing deviations from them.
So I want to acknowledge or just think about, because in order to really achieve this vision that we're laying out, you have to have some resources, you have to have some tenants essentially that you can assign these KPIs and these responsibilities to actually do the pushing of the ball forward in all these arenas, right? And then you're monitoring whether anything on their plate has fallen outside of the standard.
Yep.
And so I think that one of the reasons why this can be difficult to achieve in roofing companies is just the way that these companies tend to evolve. And we've talked about this quite a bit, where it's usually either a really high performing sales rep or somebody with a production background who starts a roofing company. And so there's habits built up where it's like, no, what it means for us to be successful, because this is what's meant for me to be successful, is doing all of the work. And at some point, you hit a level of volume, or at least an opportunity for a level of volume, to where it's just not sustainable for you to be involved in that way. And at that point, it's where you have to let go, and letting go can be difficult, but then also ensure that when you let go, you have the right person to pick up that responsibility. And then it's kind of a transition, right? So it's almost like you're swapping yourself out of certain areas of the business, and you're just kind of doing that piece by piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, the part where I talked about, sitting down and really figuring out what you want your business to look like. That's a long process. And that is how you run through sales. How do you want your sales guys to be measured? You want door knocks? Do you want, self-generated leads that they've produced, company leads closed? There's a million different KPIs you can do to set to people.
And it also depends on how you structure that sales role, right?
Yeah.
Because you have folks who are exclusively sales gen, right? They're not going to get company leads. You have folks that are honestly going to live off of company leads, and they're not going to go out and self gen. And you're okay with that because you've structured the role in a way where it's like, well, you're a closer, right? You know what you're talking about. You know how to roof. You know how to explain things to customers. We don't care about you generating leads. We care about you closing deals. And so what your KPIs will look like depends on the formation that your business is taking, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You sit down and you figure out what you want your guys to do, basic job description for the most part, and then how you measure that appropriately to make them successful. Them being successful makes you successful.
Yeah.
At very least in that area, right? Your sales team is a success. It's generally based on revenues. How do you incent them properly to, hit the revenues for the company, and as well as keeping them efficient and effective at what they're doing? And that's a conversation you sit down and you just hash it out. What do we want our sales guys to be doing?
Right.
We want our sales guys to be door knocking. Okay, well, how do we make sure that they stay door knocking? How do we incent them to door knock? How many doors do we want them to knock? What do we want their conversion rate to be, their closing rate? Do we have a closer come in behind them? You know what I mean? Like, work through the whole process of how you want your company to look, and then how you monitor that from a position of not getting too involved in their day-to-day business, right? Which is where CRMs come into play a lot. You know what I mean? I don't need to call and check on, John to see if he's actually door knocking. I can see he's actually door knocking on our door knocking app, or, I can see he's uploaded, 10 new customers into our CRM for, the next guy to come close,
right?
Stag to minimum, however you want to run it. But, you can see, and you have those KPIs from afar. If you feel the need to go look at them, you can, but you don't have to. You can hash all that stuff out in the meetings when the numbers are presented to you, an hour before the sales meeting, once or twice or 5 times a week. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Some people have different opinions on that. I personally always love the sales guys coming in every day. I feel like it actually got them to work.
Yeah, I do. I think that there's something to Because I remember just when I was in production, and it was a struggle with accountability too, because, and this is one of the biggest, it's almost a buzzword for us at this point, but it's like our core value and what we're trying to deliver is we're helping facilitate accountability in the teams of roofing companies. I remember I went to my dad and I was like, sales guys are never here. How do you know what they're doing? And he'd be like, well, they're supposed to be out, hitting some doors, and, if we give them a lead, and I was like, okay, but what visibility do you have? Like, they might be at the bar for all we know. Some were. And I was like, well, they bring contracts through the door, then we know they were out. It's like, well, okay. That's a lot of time.
It's a lot of roofing companies.
100%.
Like, I don't care. He closes jobs. He brings in contracts. What do I care what he does? You know what I mean? He could spend all day at the bar. He comes home with 2 contracts. What do I care? It's just a tough way to run a business.
It is.
Right? You're going to eventually, he or she, the salesperson, is going to not come back with those contracts.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to start wondering what they're doing all the time.
And because you haven't set that standard, there's going to be no mechanism to say like, oh, well, you're not performing up to what the expectations are. Because it's always been, well, when it comes to the door, we'll see. So I think that building a culture of accountability is something that is so key to everything that we just talked about. Like, are they going to take seriously the goals that you've set for them? Or is it going to be kind of a lax, like, no, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff flushes out during sort of your big sales meeting, big weekly sales meeting. I said I like the guys coming in every day, and I do. I like, everybody being in an office. I feel like it sort of breeds a little bit more creativity and camaraderie and all of that, right?
Yeah, like, oh, I'm part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. But, usually you have one sort of all hands big sales meeting where, the owner's involved and the production team and all of that, or maybe it's more of a company meeting, but then you can flush out, those who's really doing their job, who's hitting their KPIs, and even beyond that, everybody's hitting their KPIs. Why are we doing the numbers we're expecting to be doing? So then you need to go back and you need to adjust those KPIs and make sure that it is in line with your company goals, which is a big part of the working backwards, sort of where you want to be, and then work backwards to figure out how to get there. If I want to sell, $1 million, and I need 4 sales guys that sell, 250,000 each, and then we have a $25,000 job. That means I need them to sell 10 jobs each. So, you can work backwards that way and create the KPIs, which is something, I feel strongly about doing it that way versus like, let's just hire more sales guys. More sales guys is the answer. That is going to bring some chaos. It's going to bring revenue, probably. It's going to be chaotic.
Yeah.
Where if you can figure out what you need and then get what you need rather than just getting, more sales guys or just more, it's essentially, I don't just money. Yeah. I just need more. Whatever the bottom line is at the end of the year, it's fine as long as there's just more.
More of what right. So I think that one of the kind of root causes of that sort of approach, right, which is like, we're just going to stack more on. I've noticed there can be a resistance to defining what success looks like in a given period of time. And I think it's because it instantly sets a degree of accountability throughout the organization. It's like, this is what it means for us to be successful this year. So much of the time, again, because of the way that these businesses tend to evolve, it's just like, we'll see what opportunities come in, right? I'm fully word of mouth. I'm not taking ownership over the lead generation aspect. I'm going to do a good job and we'll see what comes to me. And there almost has to be a flip at a certain level to where it's like, we as an organization are responsible for the leads that come in, our conversion of those leads, the performance of the installation, and, obviously the quality control, which leads to better reviews. And it's really the comfort with saying, I'm fully in control of the results that I get. Roofing is truthfully a business or an industry, I think, where there is a lot more control over the results. Obviously, like, storms are a big X factor. Insurance companies aren't X factor. But if you learn how to sell retail, for instance, or you figure out, okay, I'm going to break into commercial, maybe it's a service work aspect. Like, there's so many opportunities to generate revenue if you strategically craft a plan to enter that market or to pursue that type of work. you really can foster a sense of ownership over like, okay, we're doing this. Our goal is this. If we don't hit this goal, it's a failure or it's a loss. And I think that scares people to a degree to be willing to stake their flag in the ground and say, like, if we don't achieve this,
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think that it's a necessary part of what any successful company, it's not even a roofing company, what any successful company needs to do is have a roadmap of where you want to be,
right.
so that you can figure out how to get there, right? If your goal is just high revenues, you don't have an interest in, the quality of the work and the profit margin. We've had sales guys that go out and sell a whole bunch, and then we come back and we find out that all of the stuff they sold was terrible.
Yeah.
And there was no profit in any of them. It's coming at 10% profit when it's all said and done. And you're just like,
and then it's a hobby. It's not this.
yeah,
We're just out there.
What are we even doing?
Occupying our time.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, money solves a lot of problems, right? But it solves a lot of problems for the sole purpose of you can throw money at it.
Right.
Right. So if you're spending a lot more, if you could accomplish the same bottom line, you could, the bottom line net profit of your company is X. If you can accomplish that same amount of money by doing less revenue and having a less chaotic life and a less chaotic business and happier customers and happier employees, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that? You can go hire a bunch of salespeople. Don't pay attention to them. They sell what they sell. Bring it back to a production manager who's pulling his hair out. And, you're not creating a business. You're just sort of creating this area where people.
So work happens. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that money can solve a lot of problems. My uncle, who runs Peerless Roofing, McKenna by me, he once told me, it wasn't in the context of roofing in particular. He said, money is energy. That's all that it is. And I remember at the time being like, I have no idea what that means, but it sounds like there's something there. But when you think about money as energy, you also think like, I don't have unlimited energy. I might have an abundance of it, but I have to choose how I allocate it. So if you're willing to live with chaos and throw money at chaos, you have to decide are you okay spending your energy in that way? Or is there a better, more fruitful, more fulfilling, more meaningful usage of your money / energy? If you could reduce the need to, let's say, bring on 20 sales guys, because that's the way that you increase revenue, and instead reserve some of that money as if it was energy and use it for, I don't know, maybe your family, maybe your personal well-being, etc.
Round of golf.
Yeah. Well, I will expend a lot of energy in a round of golf because I'm usually taking more strokes than most are.
I hit it in the right direction, general direction. It's rarely in the part of the lawn.
Yeah.
No, but I certainly agree with that. And that just goes back to opportunity cost. Opportunity cost doesn't have to be on a business level. I mean, if I'm spending 12 hours a day working, that is opportunity taken away from me that I could be spending with my children or my wife or friends, family, what have you. You know what I mean? Nobody talks on their deathbed about how much more they should have worked.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I love roofing because I've been blessed to be the beneficiary. Like my father, my uncles, they all run roofing companies. And I've seen what it can do for your lifestyle, for your flexibility to be able to vacation, this, that, the other. But I think so many times we almost get addicted to the chaos in a way, or we get adjusted, acclimated to it. It's like, there is such an opportunity. This is ultimately why I started raising, why I'm doing this, is because it's there is an opportunity if you can just figure a couple things out. It's really honestly not all that radical of a change that needs to happen most of the time, but you can get a couple of SOPs in place, get the right people to ensure that things are going smoothly. Your life becomes so much better. You're making the same money, but your quality of life just goes through.
Yeah, and I think there's even more to it than that.
True.
Yeah. Sure. Employees enjoy knowing what's expected of them. Right? Nobody likes being like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do today, but this guy's going to come in pissed off at me.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why.
Mm-hmm.
We're all, the workers come in, they want to know what they're supposed to be doing, so that they can get it done. And if they don't, those aren't people you want working for anyway, right? And the ones that do aren't going to stick around.
Right. And that's such a great point too, because again, going back to who starts a roofing company, they're typically the folks who don't need somebody to give them that structure. They're the ones who are more cavalier. They're the trailblazers. They're going to go out and figure it out. And I think oftentimes it gets lost that like, oh, I'm unique in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like most people are not comfortable in that environment. I have to be the one to provide structure. And sometimes because that is their personality, they don't really have the skill set to provide the structure. In that instance, you need to bring somebody on who is very structured, who can take kind of all the chaos that's in your brain. My dad's a perfect example of this. Like you look at his desk, there's Post-its everywhere, and he knows exactly where each one is at and what its importance is. But if anyone else coming in and looking at that, they're like, I'm terrified. And so you need somebody, whether it's you as the owner or what you might call an integrator, right? You can take all of that, boil it down into something that's very digestible for everyone else in the organization. That's key. That's the key to not being bogged down by high turnover, by actually getting some longevity out of your employees and like building a culture, right?
Yeah. I mean, you want to attract the people that you want to work for you. So, how do you do that? And how do you make sure that they want to stay? The good workers, the ones who have options, choose to go to the places where they feel appreciated, where they understand what's expected of them, where they feel like they can accomplish their role.
Right.
You know what I mean? Nobody wants to work their ass off all day long and then come in and just get yelled at for not doing something. Just feel like, oh, dude, I've been trying all day.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't want to get stepped on when you're down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even necessarily intentional. You can do it without realizing it. And it's generally because you have an expectation for them that they don't have for themselves. And again, it very well could just be that it hasn't been explained to them properly, which can happen a lot where you're just like, well, you're supposed to handle that. I didn't know that.
No one told me.
I'm fine with that. I would have.
Yeah.
All you have to do is ask me to do it.
I mean, I've been in companies and I've sat and I'm like, well, we've got a troublesome, employee, they're not performing, blah, blah, blah. I sit with them and like, yeah, I don't really know what my job is. It's like, I kind of know what my title is, but like what I'm supposed to be doing day to day, I have no clue. It's like, okay, well, that would explain probably some of that lack of performance. It's like, all right. And it's, as you mentioned earlier, like there's this all hands on deck mentality often where it's just like, show up, contribute in whichever way you can figure out how, right? And that's how we do this. And that's how we keep this thing moving. That's a massive reason for the high turnover, for the chaos, for the stagnation too. And oftentimes what you'll hear, like after someone's gone through that process, that experience of, yeah, we grew, things went crazy, I lost a bunch of folks, we're just going to stay small. It's too much. And it's unfortunate because the elements necessary for growth and to do it sustainably are there. It's just a couple small tweaks often that, communicate your expectations more clearly, have a formal job description, make sure those expectations are set through the interview process, etc. And then obviously follow through on that once they're in the role. And if you're going to ask them to do anything more, acknowledge it's outside the scope of their main job. And if it becomes a thing that you want them to handle frequently, then incorporate it into their role in a more formal way. But without that, it's like, man, I keep getting more added to my plate and now I'm burnt out.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it too is on the recruiting side of it. They take the best available and not what they actually need. So like if guys we have these 20 applicants and we sit down with them. We need a sales manager. Which one do we like the most? Well, do any of them fit? You know what I mean? Are we even hiring a guy?
We need a body stat.
We need a body. This guy looks good enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where, if you hire the guys you want around you, it really helps with creating a culture.
Yeah.
I've had sales managers in the past where it's just like, when you get a good one, you're just like, those other guys were not good ones like this guy does.
Yeah.
This guy's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, finding those borrow a Gino Whitman traction thing, right person, right seat sort of perspective. Keep on looking. Don't just settle for what's in front of you, because you're investing good time, money, and energy into these people, which is what I would say to somebody who tried to grow and fell back down, where it's just like, this is too much. Like, just one step at a time. Just find yourself, somebody who's on board with what you're trying to create. And then once you find one, find the next one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't try to go from 1 million to 10 million overnight, and you just hire 20 sales guys and a production manager and a sales manager and be like, all right, go make it work. I mean, like, that's just never going to be a successful model.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that level of growth can happen, but to do it sustainably you've got to really mastermind that game plan. And typically that's not how it goes.
I mean, it's certainly possible. You either are very good at recruiting and managing and leading, or you got lucky with some of the recruiting, managing, or leading.
Right. Yeah.
Because you need you can go sell $10 million job.
Right.
Some giant, whatever. If let's say you're doing residential and you go from doing, 20 jobs a year to 500, that is going to be a massive, massive undertaking that you're not going to be able to do by yourself. You're going to have to hire people, and people who hire people know that it's not easy.
Hiring is, and this is where I want to be sympathetic too, because I agree with you. Like, don't settle.
Yeah.
Find the right person.
Yeah.
Keep hiring until the right person comes along. I also know hiring is a massive drain. It's time and energy.
It's absolutely miserable. That's why, there's some headhunters out there that just get massive amounts of money just to find you that one right person. Far be it for me to say that it's not worth it. Others, we've had, sales managers and production managers that we've just tried to cling to because they know how we work, and we don't want to restart with a new one right off the bat, or it's in the middle of the year and one quits, and you're just trying to recruit, running something. It's tough. It's tough. So I'm not suggesting that, you pulled out for some perfect employee position, whatever,
but I think you're right. I think too often folks sell it. Right? Yeah. It's they kind of I can make a case to where they fit the requirements, and they're the best we have available. So we're going to run with it.
Does the person fit, or do you just really want them to fit?
Yeah. And I'll say, I've made this mistake myself, and I see it made often, where we often go to our network too. And it's oh, I know so-and-so. And yeah, they seem like they have these traits, and I'm not even going to post a public job listing. I'm not going to do interviewing. They're my person. I'm handpicking them. In my experience, both again, mine and what I've seen from others, it really works out. The best thing to do, still invite that person to apply, still have them in for an interview. You might get a new perspective on okay, compared to actually all the others who came in and interviewed, they're not as stand out as I thought they were. Yeah. It's just kind of a bias because I know the person.
Yeah. Those people are generally hard to fire too.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, recruiting's miserable. It always has been.
Yeah.
Which is why you get a lot of, even on those Facebook groups or wherever, people just trying to grab any salesperson that they can. Oh, I'm looking for a new position or something. 1099 sales guy, 50 comments.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of experience. Come to Denver, come to Arizona, come to Florida.
Yeah.
We pay more than the next guy. It's because recruiting is really hard.
It is.
It's funny when the post you were talking about earlier that connected us. I got several job offers.
Right.
I got job offers, a couple in Florida, Texas, Colorado. They're just looking, because the post essentially detailed how my experience in the industry.
Right.
People well, if you do that and do this.
Yeah. Right. And let me ask you this. Of all those job offers, do you think you went through a nice formal interview process against other candidates and you were the best candidates available?
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't. There were a couple that were almost formal job offers without ever talking to me.
Yes.
Which
that's what I figured.
Kind of why there were a couple that were more along the lines of, this position's open and we'd like to talk to you about it. All of which I shut down pretty quick. It's not something that I was interested in doing. If I was going to go that route, I'd just start my own roofing company. I do enjoy running the crew every once in a while.
Yeah.
And getting out and talking to people and having fun. So I do still enjoy doing that. But running the 100 jobs at the same time, I'm over that.
Yeah.
I can't keep doing that. in some middle of nowhere town in Indiana, or Kentucky. You have a Burger King and a McDonald's.
Kmart.
Kmart. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think Kmart's still a thing anymore.
My brother went to college at Upper Iowa University. It's in Fayette, Iowa, I believe. And it was 20 minutes from the campus to the nearest. There was no Walmart. There was a Pizza Ranch, a Kmart, and a club.
We worked in a small town so I think it was like Bluffton, Indiana. Something like that. It's over by Fort Wayne. They had a Chinese restaurant and a McDonald's, which was the spot to go for breakfast, by the way, in that town.
Yep.
And then a Lowe's and, one or two other restaurants. So when you're grabbing lunch, you're like, are we going to Chinese food? Are we getting China buffet? Or we going to McDonald's? Because those are our options.
Yeah. The healthy option. McDonald's. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Chinese buffet.
Buffet's not great. That's a lot of salt.
It is a lot of salt. Yeah. But,
Yeah. Those are, I look back on those days. It's going to be fine now, just running around like a crazy person, running the crews, running all these jobs, but I just don't want to do it again. Sales teams are fine, but to run, again, not really my thing. I like the operations. I like not only helping people get to where they're trying to go, but selfishly, I sort of enjoy the puzzle pieces, putting them together.
Yeah.
And getting something working right. You know what I mean? And you can have these conversations with people and they'll be like, that's going to help. You know what I mean?
I feel the same exact way. I'll never forget the moment it dawned on me how much I love operations. I was at a restaurant, like a cafe in Madison, Wisconsin, grabbing breakfast with my wife. And I was like, okay, we wait in line, we order, then they give us a number. And then it's like a regular sit-down, restaurant experience where they have to serve and everything. And I was like, that's different. And it's so much more efficient. And when you think about, and I was like, no one else is thinking about this, Robert. What you are strange in these ways. But yeah, I was like, no, that's such an effective way to run a restaurant, and you get your tables turned over faster. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, that's. I think part of it was because of I was doing what we do with Raise now, and I just was in that mindset. No, that's also, Josh, why I'm excited to have you on board. I think you've found the right home, because that's what we're all about. Is I love operations. I love crafting processes. I love finding out where the bottlenecks are. And that's what we're going to be doing. So excited to have you on board. I know we've got to be getting close to, do you got to watch?
I have a phone.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know you've got to get rolling. I want to thank you for making the trek down. I want to thank you again for not wearing any Packers gear. And I look forward to all the cool things we're going to be accomplishing here the next year and beyond.
Yeah, happy to be here. Glad to be on the podcast and excited for the year in front of us.
All right.